in Russia, there's no daylight. Not between Russia and China, not between Russia and India, not between Russia and Iran, and not between Russia and Venezuela, the other big oil producer, the country that has the largest proven the world's largest proven reserves of oil on the planet. No, no daylight between those countries. And the possibility of trading rupees and rubles, all of a sudden investors are realizing, no, the Russians are okay. They are. But in 2014, they weren't. And so the Russian economy took a big hit. Putin immediately started on two things because he knew that this shit was going to hit a crescendo at some point. He started protecting his economy and creating autarky, that is total independence, which is a very difficult process. But that's the aim that he had, number one. And the other was to have a military that'd be up to snuff, even though he'd been working on that project since at least 2007 with the previous defense minister, whose name slips my mind right now. It's not important. He'd been working at that very diligently, of cleaning out the corruption in the military and the military procurement, of course, which is where the corruption usually is. Look at the F-35. That's all corruption, man. That's why the plane sucks. And it's going to be a fucking disaster when it's actually deployed in a war, in a combat area. That plane is not going to fucking fly. You heard it here first, boys. But anyway, the Russians, they started preparing from 2016 to 2020, okay? Really preparing, battening down the hatches because they knew what was coming. And what happened is finally Biden administration came in and all these fucking people showed up. It's not just Victoria Nuland, people like Jake Sullivan, like Anthony Blinken. Anthony Blinken was instrumental insofar as the Iran deal is concerned. He was instrumental in all kinds of fishy shit going on, okay? Jake Sullivan, he's a specialist in regime change. He was all over the place insofar as Libya is concerned, Iraq, Syria. These people are all about regime change and destroying countries for the benefit of the United States and of American corporate interests and American political corruption. Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken were the people who put Hunter Biden in Burisma. Yeah. Those were the two guys. Jake Sullivan, if you don't know, is the National Security, the National Security Council. And Anthony Blinken is the U.S. Secretary of State, the highest foreign policy, foreign affairs official in the United States. And so they're the ones who put Hunter Biden in Burisma, as well as all of Hunter Biden's drug dealing and taking friends, because Hunter Biden has apparently a whole coterie of druggy friends, because he's a druggie, he's a junkie, right? And all these junkies, they're highfalutin, sophisticated, well-dressed, but they're junkies, You ever seen a picture of Hunter Biden without his fake teeth? He's got the teeth of a junkie. He is a fucking junkie, right? But he's the junkie son of the former vice president and now president. And so Jake Sullivan and Anthony Blinken were the ones who put him with in Burisma, and along with all the junkie friends. And that's why when what's his name, Vladimir Putin was talking about all the drug addicts, I think he was referring to Zelensky and also the Hunter Biden coterie, okay? But I mean, and they're all in Ukraine. That's the thing, man. Yeah. You drive around Kiev, right? And there are a bunch of men's clubs, and they're huge, they're enormous, and extremely expensive. I mean, you walk in and you got to drop a couple of grand at least, okay? Dollars. They're extremely expensive. Why the fuck you think that they exist in like downtown Kiev? Beautiful hookers. I mean, it's incredible, right? And very expensive and very tasteful, but a nightclub, and so it's fundamentally gaudy. I mean, it's in the DNA of the place, right? But why do you think that there's so many of them? Because these Westerners, these sons of politicians and all the rest of it, they go to Ukraine to play. Cocaine, hookers, all kinds of stuff. And of course, there's all kinds of videotape. That's the thing. That's a key issue, see? See, all these guys are compromised. Kompromat, as the Russians call it. And the Chinese have this kompromat. The Russians have it. The Ukrainians have it. There's all kinds of shit on these people, okay? And, that's the terror, the panic of the people in Washington. Because most of them, I mean, like, how could I put it? See, if you're a fairly squeaky clean guy, I mean, take my case. I like to fuck around as much as the next guy, right? I've never done anything like really egregious. If anything came out like publicly, I'd be like, yeah, it's no big deal. Mhm. Yeah, because you lead a fairly straight and narrow kind of life. But these guys don't, all kinds of decadences and degeneracies, you know. And if some of the pictures that were on the Hunter Biden laptop are true, we're talking about beyond merely, corruption. We're talking, how can I put it in a way that YouTube won't get me banned or stripped or whatever, deplatformed. We're talking about trafficking in sex, in child. Okay, I mean, just really disgusting stuff. And there are pictures, okay, that kind of like prove that shit and that implicate other people. Mhm. Yeah, it's all kinds of ugly, okay? And so the point is that, see, all of these people are all wrapped up in this ball of corruption around Ukraine because Ukraine is this trough where they can feed on money and drugs and women and ecstasy, not the pill, but the feeling, the vibe of ecstasy, of just lawlessness. What Russia used to be back in the 90s, mhm, which they want to reimpose on Russia. And of course, which Putin doesn't want, for selfish reasons of his own, the bastard. So anyway, that's what's going on. And so, yeah, so we're up to October 2021. So what's going on, as soon as the Biden administration comes to office in January of 2021, right, they start implementing a plan. Victoria Nuland starts implementing a plan. And the plan is very simple. They're going to invade the Donbass and they're going to take it back from the separatists, right? Now, I'm not going to go into the whole history of it because you all know it. If you don't know it, go and see plenty of videos I've made of. So they're going to go back in and take back the separatist republics of Lugansk and Donetsk, right? And here's something I've noticed about women. See, if you're with a girlfriend or a wife and she starts saying to you, "Are you cheating on me?" And she starts like checking your clothes and stuff to see if you're cheating on her, she's fucking around on you. It's a tick. Women have this, and it's true, and every guy can tell you the exact same thing. When a woman accuses you of anything, it's because she's doing it to you right now. She says, "You don't listen to me enough." It's because she doesn't pay attention to you at all. "You don't love me enough." "Are you cheating on me?" I'm telling you, it's the way of women, man. And feminists and whatever, whomever loser is watching this and having like a little hissy fit. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Okay. Victoria Nuland started saying that the Russians were putting troops on the border with Ukraine, blah, 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 and getting like a whole hissy fit about it. And what was really going on was that she was encouraging Zelensky, that she had handpicked, by way of her association with Igor Kolomoisky. They were the ones who decided that Zelensky would be the president. This perfect vehicle, an actor who would do exactly what they wanted. That's what happened. That's how Zelensky got picked. It wasn't just Igor Kolomoisky, which is what I thought earlier. I started looking into this shit, and Victoria Nuland is all over this shit. She's right there with Kolomoisky. They practically had a casting session to decide who was going to be the next president of Ukraine. And they made up their minds and they micromanaged it so that Zelensky became president, But he's a puppet. And he's controlled by Victoria Nuland and by Igor Kolomoisky, or he used to be. Now he no longer is controlled by Igor Kolomoisky, and I'll tell you who controls him now in just a second, okay? So anyway, in January, the word is that now that the Biden administration is in power, they're going to set up the conditions for Ukraine to go into the Donbass, take back Lugansk and Donetsk, and a big fuck you very much to the Russians. In February of 2021, they even went so far, the Ukrainians even went so far as to declare that they were going to take back Crimea by any means necessary, leaving the door open to the use of force to take back Crimea. And who do you think encouraged that? Victoria Nuland, of course. See? So Victoria Nuland is pushing the Zelensky regime to confront the Russians and egging them on, and they decide to assemble an army. Okay, there's the crisis in April, in the spring of 2021, but things really start going in October of 2021, where Nuland goes to the Kremlin, and in the Kremlin, and word is that this was in Russian. She spoke to them in Russian, and the word is that she used the most, sailor-like language imaginable. I mean, really, really vulgar shit. She basically told the Russians to their faces, told Lavrov to his face, that she would crush his economy unless they did exactly what she wanted, which was no more support for the Donbass, to pull out of the Donbass so that the Ukrainian army could sweep in and take it. And she threatened them to their face. I mean, you got to say that she had balls, okay? I mean, not many people go into the Kremlin and just threaten them right to their face, man. You got to admire that, I mean, see, you can remember, well, you probably don't remember, but in 79, at the end of 1979, Time magazine said that the Ayatollah Khomeini was the man of the year. And everybody had a hissy fit. And I'm like, why? I remember I was like 11 years old, not quite 12 years old. And I was thinking, why is everybody getting upset? He was the most influential man of the year, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's a moral man or an evil man, but he was the man most influential. By the same token, I look at Nuland going to the Kremlin and threatening them like that to their fucking face. Balls. I respect that. I don't like her. I think she's fucking evil, but I can respect that. It was a power move, man. And it must have rattled the Russians because they kept talking about it for months afterward, right? But also it put them on notice. And so all the time, the Americans were talking about Russians putting troops on the border with Ukraine. But what was really going on was that Ukraine was putting its frontline fighters on the contact line with the Donbass. And they were preparing for a lightning strike. It was going to be an invasion, 2 days, 4 days tops, just sweep through and take over the whole fucking thing and level the whole fucking place, because they were going to do NATO tactics. NATO tactics are American tactics, and the American mode of war is to destroy everything, kill them all, let God sort them out. Kill all the civilians, every man, woman, and child. Doesn't matter. Kill them all, turn the whole place to fucking rubble, and declare it victory. That's what they were going to do, right? And what happened was that, and they were going to do that in March. The word is that the order was going to go on, the invasion was going to happen in mid-March. And the Russians simply beat them to it. Because one of the things that freaked out NATO back in the spring of 2021 was that there were some problems, and the Russians moved about 150,000 soldiers in 72 hours. It freaked the fuck out of NATO, because that's a lot of fucking men to move in that short time, okay? And yeah, there's been a lot of issues like logistics now in this invasion, be that as it may, but moving the troops around like that, the Russians did it and they accomplished it. And so the word is that basically Putin realized that the Ukrainian army was going to sweep into the Donbass, and he wasn't going to let that happen. Because what happened was, of course, and what we're seeing with some of the atrocities of the Ukrainian armed forces, you see, after the 2014 coup d'etat, right? All these extremist groups, the right sector and all those people, they were disbanded nominally, and they were integrated into the Ukrainian armed forces, okay? But they were spread out throughout. And so they acted as stiffeners insofar as extremism within the Ukrainian armed forces. Because there's a concept of stiffening, which is in military, sometimes what's good is that you have, like, for instance, you have a fuck up unit or a platoon that's not very good. And so you bring in like a really, really good soldier, and he acts as a stiffening agent to make the whole unit stronger. And comes in and sort of like imposes discipline. He's not a sergeant. He's not a non-commissioned officer. He's simply a soldier that has been given direction to bring up the standards of the whole unit. And that helps a lot. And that's why, for instance, professional mercenaries are often used, and have historically been used, as stiffeners for large armies of less disciplined soldiers, because they are brought in and spread out around, and they bring up the morale and the discipline of all the units, you see? Instead of having to train each individual unit, you just spread out these people. But the same thing happened essentially ideologically with these extremist groups, Right Sector, S-14, and all the rest of it. They were spread out throughout the Ukrainian armed forces. And so all of the Ukrainian armed forces have this extremist bias, this hyper-nationalist, pro-Ukrainian, anti-Russian attitude that devolves into atrocities and human rights violations, which we started to see. I mean, I posted those videos today, as a matter of fact. Okay, and so what happens is that after 2015, these men were spread out throughout the entire Ukrainian armed forces, and the Ukrainian armed forces were indeed grown and better equipped and supplied, and they became an extremist army. And they were planning on sweeping into the Donbass and just annihilating everything. And that's when Putin pulled the trigger and said, we're going to beat them to the punch. And that's where we're in the situation we're in. Now, Victoria Nuland was instrumental in pushing for this invasion of the Donbass. And she now has Dmytro Yarosh. Remember that guy from 2014, the head of the Right Sector? Well, he is the guy who is advising Zelensky about how to conduct the war. And Yarosh controls the current army chief, whose name I neglected to write down in my notes, but it's not important. Yarosh is an extremist, a hardcore extremist, you know. As to whether he's an anti-Semite or not, I don't know, but there he is working with a Jewish woman out in Washington, a small, petite, tidy little Jewish woman in Washington named Victoria Nuland, and he takes his orders from her. And he passes along to her all of the information from the negotiations. I mean, she's micromanaging this whole fucking thing, okay? Now, Nuland, admitted recently in congressional testimony about the biolabs. And she said that, you know, the biolabs, indeed, it was American biological laboratories in Ukraine, 26 of them, or 30 of them. And I should pin down that number. I always keep forgetting to pin that number down, but it doesn't matter. It's roughly the same number. And those biolabs, she's very concerned that the Russians will capture them because the Russians might use that against them and commit some atrocity. You know, so basically, she's admitting that they're bioweapons, all kinds of nasty shit. Okay, and she admitted it. I don't know if it was on purpose or a slip of the tongue. And I suspect it might have been a slip of the tongue because she looked shocked and surprised. You know, I sort of like, it was a question that Marco Rubio tossed at her. It was supposed to be a softball, but it caught her flat-footed, and I think that she panicked, and it happens to the best of us, okay? And, you know, especially when you're juggling a lot of lies like Victoria Nuland is, and she let loose that the biolabs were like real, American, yeah, and more information is coming out, that whole shit show, right? But basically, she is the one insisting that there is going to be a chemical attack. First it was biological attack, but now it's chemical attack. And she's pushing that story. And she's the one who's micromanaging, apparently, the whole PR campaign that is convincing everybody in the West that the Russians are losing, the Ukrainians are winning, which will give the justification for the false flag. Now, what's interesting is that Anthony Blinken and I mean, because we don't have to worry about Wendy Sherman. Anthony Blinken, also, of course, Jake Sullivan, they are taking, you know, supporting roles. Victoria Nuland is the one running this show because she's, first of all, she's the only one who knows Russian. She knows the history intimately. And because of her own, you know, psychodrama, you know, she's the perfect person to be leading this whole shit show. This is hers. She's the person in charge, you know. In war games, they talk about Team Red and Team Blue. Well, if Team Red is the leader is Putin, Team Blue, it's Victoria Nuland. And she's running this whole shit show, okay? Even though she's just an Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, which seems very obscure and trivial, she's the woman. She's the woman driving this war. She's the woman who's creating the conditions for a false flag attack. And it's coming. No question about it. It's coming, and it's going to be something awful, and there are going to be a lot of dead people. It's no different from the snipers that I am convinced that she organized, okay? Now, there's no proof of this. There's no proof, okay? But circumstantially, and, you know, we're all grown-ups, we can make the obvious inference. Who would benefit from this shit? Victoria Nuland. She had the goal of overthrowing the Yanukovych regime, and so she used these snipers. And were they Israeli snipers? It seems logical. If they weren't Israeli snipers, then they were some private military contractor snipers. American, from wherever, Blackwater or whatever the name of the successor is. Um, yeah. And so she's used to that. She's used to that kind of game. Okay. Now you got to keep in mind, Dmytro Yarosh, this crazy guy from Right Sector, he's the guy who's actually in control in Ukraine. It's not Zelensky. Okay. He's the guy. And he takes his marching orders. He's got a little earpiece and he gets the word from Victoria Nuland. Okay. And she's micromanaging this whole fucking thing. Okay. And the destiny of tens of millions of people depend on her. And whether the United States goes to nuclear war depends on her. And this woman, because of these ancient ancestral hatreds that she carries in her heart, that burned in her soul as a girl of 8, 9, 10 years old. Yeah, this is where we're at. It's fucking frightening if you ask me, but yeah. Anyway, I've talked long enough and I don't really have anything else to say. I don't know how this is going to end. I hope it ends peacefully. I hope that Victoria Nuland's desire for a horrifying attack that will kill tens or hundreds or thousands of civilians, that will justify a NATO invasion, I hope that does not come to pass. But I am extremely pessimistic, because one of the things about Victoria Nuland that you realize is that she is extremely effective. And remember, she's not alone. She's got her husband, Robert Kagan, and that whole cabal of people, all of them carrying this ancient ancestral resentment towards Russia. They hate Russia so much. They want it destroyed. And I insist it's not because of money. It's because of, this psychodrama that is over a century old at this point. You have to understand that. You have to understand how the persecution of Jews in Russia 115 years ago, 120 years ago, is the cause of this war. You have to understand that, okay? And they will not rest. They will not rest until Russia is destroyed. The only thing that will keep them at bay is a collapsing America, where they have to figure out what the hell is going on, okay? And the collapsing America is happening awfully quickly, okay? So it might actually be, a race to see which happens first. But, it's an ugly, ugly situation. And what's most important of all is that these people feel that they are so close to destroying Russia. So close. And that's why they it's not only that the masks are off, any kind of limitation is off. Everything is on the table. And the Biden slips that have been happening, where Biden has said to the 82nd Airborne that you're going to see when you get to Ukraine, like they're going to invade Ukraine. And, Putin, we got to get rid of him. He's a bad man, regime change. It's on the table, man. This is total war. The Americans have not fired weapons yet at the Russians, but they fired virtual weapons, every single one. And right now, do you have any idea what kind of virtual cyber warfare that must be going on, man? It must be all over the fucking place, okay? I'm telling you, this war is going on. Victoria Nuland is the commanding general of Team Blue. And she's relentless, okay? But the thing is, see, Putin, he's a crafty motherfucker. That's a fact, okay? I mean, the fucker is not survived 23 years as president of Ukraine, as the undisputed leader of Ukraine, the undisputed leader of Russia for 23 years, unless he's crafty as a fox, okay? So we're going to see how these two competitors match up, okay? But it's going to be close. It's going to be goddamn close. So anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you next time.